I thought I might as well read another one here. And this goes on to talk about Sir John McCall. Who's John McCall?
He was I think at that time, he was one of the lieutenant governors. The monarch appoints her lieutenant governor to the island for a period, I think it's 4 years or something like that, and is their term. And they come and go. There's been a number of them involved in all this over the years. And what they're supposed to do, customarily, is to be the eyes and ears of the monarch, actually keeping an eye on and making sure that the local mobsters are not abusing and oppressing the ordinary population of Jersey. However, certainly in the post-World War II years, the office of Her Majesty's Lieutenant Governor on Jersey has become wholly corrupted, completely corrupted. And one of McCall's predecessors, back in 2007, when I first became aware of the dramatic extent and depth of the child abuse cover-up and the fact that actual civil servants were running it and opposing the democratically elected politicians with actual legal responsibility for child protection. This was, absolutely clear to me, a breakdown in the rule of law then. So one of the things I did was go and see the then Lieutenant Governor, Andrew Ridgway, and he was absolutely contemptuous, completely dismissive, typical British upper-class militaristic background, ordinary, no concept whatsoever of the lives of ordinary people, powerless, vulnerable people, of the kind I was trying to support and to help. Completely contemptuous and dismissive. These people usually have been a succession of idiots too, because after getting appointed as Lieutenant Governor to Jersey, they invariably take up a lot of non-executive directorships that are given to them, by the local law firms and mobsters and businesses. So they immediately become corrupted. And
it seems like the easier thing to be. It's easier to be corrupt there, because the system is designed to be corrupt. It's not designed to be
the office.
Yeah.
So this is what can ordinary powerless people on Jersey do? How can my former constituents, people like Daniela Jarman, vulnerable, powerless, damaged, abused people, how can anyone like that who's got no money, no power, no influence, how can they possibly even get their ordinary basic rights to democratic representation and a non-corrupt police force? How can they, even today, people in that position have got no chance whatsoever against this huge corrupted power structure.
Yeah, the power structure designed to build financial institutions is also governing the rights of everybody else, but the financial institutions are so powerful, spending so much money, that the little guy is never going to get a look in there. There's just no ways they'll be able to fight for their rights.
Absolutely right.
So this is from the letter from Sinel. Then to add insult to injury, Sir John McCall writes rudely, aggressively, and inaccurately, and upon occasions in threatening terms. By inaccurately, simply that he or those responsible for the content of his letters simply invent facts, such as might assist William Baloche. Given that he fulfills a judicial function relative to the Court of Appeals, Jersey Law 1961 is amended, that is highly inappropriate. And then goes on to say, so McCall appears ignorant, willfully or otherwise, of the constitutional position, apparently unaware of what really goes on within the island. The effect of this is that the Queen is providing explicit and implicit support for the pedophiles, rapists, fraudsters, criminals, and their supporters who remain at liberty within Jersey. That is the effect of an uninformed, uncaring, or ineffective monarch. In power vacuums, evil grows like a weed. Boy, those are strong words and needed in this case, and really echo what you've been saying for a long time. And it's important because some people say to me about you, oh, he's been saying this for years. And of course, you have been saying it for years.
I have, but I'm right.
It doesn't make you wrong.
I've been right all along.
But these are powerful words going directly to Buckingham Palace. And in short, we in Jersey are Her Majesty's subjects, but we have been abandoned by her to the wiles of her unworthy appointees. Now that Her Majesty is without doubt truly aware of the position, so he, like you, believes that the Queen knew about this, knew everything that was going on at this time. This is probably 2015, at the same period of time. I hope that it will not be long before effective steps are taken without the necessity to involve further persons or agencies. Powerful stuff. Very direct, very straightforward. And the response he got is stunning. I
think the most relevant one is the one from Sir Christopher Guyte. 22nd of June, 2015.
Okay. So that's the one that we'll read out now. So this is, Dear Mr. Sinel, thank you for your letter of 6th of May alleging widespread corruption in Jersey and inviting Her Majesty to intervene in the island's domestic affairs. I understand that you have been in extended correspondence with the Ministry of Justice Crown Dependencies team on these and related matters in the past, and that you have been provided with advice about making a complaint in respect of the bailiff, should you be concerned about his actions. There is very little I can add to that advice, other than to state that the allegations you make would be a matter for the island's authorities to investigate under Jersey law. I would certainly suggest that any evidence you may hold in relation to criminal activity be reported to the appropriate authorities. Yours sincerely, Sir Christopher Geit, the Private Secretary of the Queen. Now,
and of course, what he's suggesting there is that we basically, the only avenue of complaint we have is to complain actually to the people, the very mobsters that are responsible for the breakdown in the rule of law that we're complaining about, which of course is an absurdity.
It's an absurdity, and it's a circular, justice system, obviously, that they know exists, so they know it'll go anywhere. So he's basically telling you and all the victims of the child abuse and all the victims of the rape and whatever other crimes have been happening on the island to basically go, expletive off, because there's no other solution. There's no ways for you to find justice with the very people who are committing those crimes.
Yeah, I think one of the other, just briefly, one of the other very interesting factors, which is dramatically revealing of the true nature of what's going on in the kind of whole Jersey and London situation, is that, of course, when they were covering up the child abuse and protecting people like Jimmy Savile and illegally suspending the police chief and politically suppressing me back in 2008, 2009, and so on, Jimmy Savile was still alive at this time, of course. Now, that all of that kind of corruption and cover-up that was carried out on behalf of people like Savile and others like him on Jersey, that was ultimately authorised and empowered by the powers that be in London. They even employed...
In fact, Sir Geit himself, here's a graphic, you can't see it, but in my research on this, it seems that Sir Geit has been involved in covering up the Andrew aspects of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. He was involved in covering up the Savile scandal, you suggest, in Jersey, and he was involved in this other scandal, which you mentioned up earlier, which was with Peter Ball scandal, which is another scandal involving Prince Charles, where he was a friend of a bishop who was a pedophile, there's no other way to describe it, and defended him for a very long period of time, including buying him a house in the Duchess, it's the
Duchy of Cornwall.
Thank you, the Duchy of Cornwall. I apologize. So, and the letters that the fawning letters that Prince Charles writes to Peter Ball are quite stunning. And he gets rebuked, also around this time, in 2015, he gets rebuked by the investigation around this, who really criticized Charles for being involved with this guy, even after the fact that he knew there was a pedophile and that they were sharing people or young men around with other bishops and who knows what else was going on there. It's quite a stunning series of claims against Prince Charles. And it's particularly stunning because Prince Charles is, of course, very close friends as well, or was very close friends with Jimmy Savile. So you've got two pedophiles that are friendly with the future king of England, and he's protecting both of them.
Yeah, and you have to ask, the Queen is generally looked upon very favourably by the average member of the British public, because she's been for decades and decades very favourably portrayed by the British establishment media. But we have to ask questions, just how blunt, how functional, how competent are these people? Now, you might cut the Queen a bit of slack and say, given what she was born into and the way she's been raised, if she had certain sociopathic traits, like a complete absence of empathy and a coldness and a dismissiveness to vulnerable people, and maybe that's an inevitable consequence of her bringing up. But certainly we can say, certainly of Prince Charles, that this man exhibits a lot of profound dysfunctions. He's fundamentally, I think, clearly an inadequate human being. And we have to ask the question, given all of the Jersey situation, the kind of things that we've been talking about, will vulnerable, powerless people on Jersey and genuine Democrats may become even more endangered, bluntly, and more at risk under a Charles monarchy than they even were under the Queen's monarchy. And that's a very real danger. This is a man clearly on the record of associating with and going out of his way to use his power and influence to cover up child abuses. Now, this has to be of the most profound concern. If the monarchy itself was a modern, competent, functional body capable of operating safely, it would have bluntly chosen to review itself. It would have invited the government to review its, the appropriateness of its current structures, the current British constitutional system, whether that needs amending to make the monarch less powerful than the monarch currently is, to make sure that they meddle less in democracy, that they don't do things like getting involved with child abusers like Epstein, or Savile or Peter Ball. The monarchy, if the monarchy was a competent and safe body, quite some years ago, it would have sat down with the UK government, the elected government, and invited and sought a fundamental review of it itself and its structures and its habits and the safeguards around it. And the fact that the monarchy appears to have bluntly done the opposite of that and seems to have retrenched itself even more into...
He did respond to this. In fairness to the Prince, he did respond quite at length. He mentioned there was 6 pages of response to the allegations around Peter Ball. And he seems to say that he didn't know. He doesn't seem to be telling you the full truth, because a BBC documentary would later find out that he did, in fact, buy a house for the bishop, and he expressed enormous amounts of remorse for what happened to the bishop and not much remorse for the victims. But
can I just make an observation there? You say 6 pages. You say this was a good response.
Well,
I've had to write bluntly thousands of pages of often very complex, detailed and demanding and all kinds of stuff in fighting this battle. And one of the illegal, basically police state monarch authorized suppressions against me carried out by the mobster law firm, Appleby Global, to whom control over Jersey's prosecution system and judiciary was basically sold by the Balash brothers. So the Crown's powers were basically sold by the Balash brothers to Appleby's. On one of the occasions when I was getting judicially harassed for my campaigning and my journalism, they actually served, I think, 35,000 pages of documentation without any legal representation whatsoever. It was so much of the stuff. I actually had to get a friend with a van and a sack trolley to carry all of this, get all the stuff down. So the fact that somebody's written 6-page letter trying to excuse themselves in all this is just bullshit. And
it is.
Let me point out a really fundamental point about that inquiry. That was what's called ICSA, Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse. And that's the United Kingdom ongoing public inquiry. Yet, interestingly, the authorities in London, the Palace and Whitehall, the Cabinet and the then Home Secretary, Theresa May, have absolutely gone out of their way to absolutely make absolutely certain that ICSA, the UK inquiry, will not look at all at anything that took place in the Crown dependencies, particularly Jersey, and will not look at all at any roles any of these UK authorities and agencies, like the monarch, Prince Charles, like Prince Andrew, and questions about how much they lobbied, their mother would all sat down to help cover up things back in 2008. ICSA, if it was a competent and proper public inquiry, it would be examining those questions. What role did the UK authorities play in the Jersey cover-up back in 2007, 8, 9, when Savile was still alive? But because they are not, and they've absolutely gone out of their way to absolutely firewall events in Jersey, and the Jersey establishment's done the same with any events in London. So that artificial firewall between the two jurisdictions in many ways basically says all you need to know.
Absolutely.
There's something big. There was a lot of big communication and collusion and conspiracy between the authorities on Jersey and the authorities in London, and they don't want that.
Look, by definition, these people are above the law. Prince Charles and the Queen are above the law, and it's there are no other people on the planet, I think, that are like that other than monarchs. So that's why they're in that situation where they can get away with this. And I don't say that's good. I'm saying that's just the reality of why you're in a situation where finding true justice here is going to be complicated. I do want to read a couple of things from this back and forth between what Peter Ball said and then what the prince responded, just to make sure everyone understands what the content here was. So Peter Ball says in a letter to Charles, life continues to be pretty nasty for me, for it seems that my accusers still want to continue their malicious campaign. Luckily, they are beginning to show some of their fraudulent plans. So still claiming this is all giant made-up conspiracy. The prince responds, I wish I could do more. I feel so desperately strongly about the monstrous wrongs that have been done to you and the way you have been treated. He goes on to say, I pray the duchy will be able to find something suitable for you, both in due course, but it may take a little time to locate it. I long to see you both settled somewhere that suits you and gives you the peace and tranquility, and not too far from here, so you can come over more easily. And I guess, sorry, there's a bit of a mistake here on the graphic. The quote ends there. So he obviously feels very strongly about the bishop and wanted to maintain a friendship with him after these allegations came out, and had been friendly with him for for decades, really, as he was with Savile.
Mm-hmm. And compare and contrast the absolute support and protection and largesse people like Savile and Peter Ball get from these powerful people. Compare and contrast that with my situation. I was opposing child abusers. I was democratically elected, the only meaningful opposition figure in Jersey politics. I was the person who was leading the charge to try and protect these child abuse victims and expose their abuse. And this whole state apparatus, represented by people like Charles, basically intervened to illegally suspend the good police chief, turn the police force against me, have me prosecuted for representing my constituents and doing, independent journalism, and have me put in prison repeatedly. And I've not had so much as £5 worth of legal representation throughout that whole period. The fact that the scum have had the protection of the elites, and the good guys, people like me and Graham Power and Lenny Harper, just got completely trashed by them. And the fact that they're still not willing to face up to those failings, that says, I think, a lot of very concerning things about the nature of the British elite. I get routine death threats. My life is in danger here on Jersey, and it'll be bluntly, it just is. Like I said, they've killed at least 2 people already. I could get killed at any moment. The nature of the powers arranged against people like me and the vulnerable people on Jersey are just so huge. It's very difficult to combat.
It's formidable, and you've done such an impressive job of holding up your part of this and being so courageous and continuing to talk about it. But it is stunning to me that with all the evidence that exists out there, why can they not do what the Catholic Church has done? And so there's been things happening here that we are not, particularly proud of, and many criminal things happen to young kids, and we need to take care of what happened, because times have changed, maybe, whatever excuse they want to put out there. I don't know. It seems to me that there's a moment here before he becomes king where he might be able to do some of that stuff, where he might actually be able to say, I was wrong, or we were all wrong and things happened that shouldn't have happened, or maybe we've just evolved. The people who've been hurt by this, we want to look after. We want to look after them in a way that leads them, at least as they remain the remaining years of their lives here on this planet, at least comfortable. But you're not even getting any of that outreach at all. All you're getting is more cold shoulder, more stone walls. And it's very frustrating to imagine someone like the monarch, the current monarch, who everyone admires and looks up to, responding to such allegations like this in the way that
I legitimately have to worry that my car's going to explode every time I turn the key.
That's terrifying, and no one should live under those circumstances. Not in Great Britain, surely not. This is unbelievable that in this day and age, this kind of imprisonment of political thought and imprisonment of people who are doing the just things for society are still happening. And the reason I keep bringing it back, so go ahead.
There are, and the authorities here, the police force, and all the relevant authorities in London, in Britain, in the UK, including the security services, they know this perfectly well for a stone fact. There are all kinds of child abusers, rapists, murderers walking free on Jersey right now. Mm-hmm. And they know it.
And they know it, and they know that they're not going to be arrested because it's easy for them to do. They know
the authorities know it.
Yeah, yes.
And the authorities have basically, decided that keeping that kind of situation is preferable to any kind of embarrassment or inconvenience to the British state.
And this is why I think it is important that we keep raising the issue in Jersey for Americans who are primarily the audience for the show, is that there is a through line from what's going on in Jersey to the mob the organized criminal mob, not the mob, but it was also the mob that attacked the Capitol, but the organized criminal elements, the transnational criminal elements that are invading the United States and the United States justice system. There is a connection there, which we cannot ignore, related to the powers that allow these offshore havens to exist. And in this case, that offshore haven exists because of the Queen. Now, there's others that exist for other reasons, but as we tackle this enemy that's creeping into American democracy and threatening to destroy it, we have to look at who's enabling it. And in some regards, there is people like the Queen, but also other jurisdictions as well. But it's not something we can ignore, because if you ignore it, as we've done maybe now with Donald Trump's criminal cases, we'll see where that goes. But hopefully he does face justice. But if we keep letting the system continue, nothing's going to change at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of corruption facilitated by tax havens in generally. Britain is not alone in this. A number of other large nation states have small tax havens, hidden under their wings. But Britain is by far and away the worst offender here. Britain has got a number of kind of what they call overseas territories, like the British Virgin Islands, Epstein hangout, and all kinds of dodgy stuff gets done through the British Virgin Islands. A lot of the mob money that's made through drug importation into like Florida from the drug cartels. That used to be, a lot of it still is, but the great majority of it back in the day, Miami Vice kind of era, that was going through the British Virgin Islands, was where that was getting laundered. And when the US authorities started to crack down and get more effective in stopping that, then that trade, that money laundering trade that was going into the BVI, simply moved across the pond and came into Jersey predominantly.
Right. And it's that money. It's also arms trading. You see you see a lot of
arms trading.
Even Sir Geit over there. I don't have time to play the clip, but he was involved with another one of these arms enterprises that was selling arms to the Saudis illegally, unethically, whatever it was that they were doing, signed off by Boris Johnson. After he left the Queen's employ as her secretary, he went to work for BAE, I think it's the name of the company, as an advisor. And so you see this revolving door of people involving themselves in arms and other activity, and then coming back into the civil service, wherever it is that they might be doing it.
Yeah, and one of the things that was very interesting, when Sir Christopher Geit appeared before the parliamentary committee a few weeks ago, one of the MPs had really done his homework and put a lot of...
I think I can. I may have spoken too soon, but I think I have it here. But here we go. Let's play it, and we'll come back and talk about it after this. 1 second.
Do you find it ironic at all that you've been brought in to advise on propriety and ethics in government when you've held a paid post with BAE Systems? And just for the record, for anyone watching or who reads the minutes of this, let me just clarify what I mean. This is a company which has plumbed the depths of unethical behaviour. It's been convicted of defrauding the government in the US and paid $500 million fine in a plea bargain. It's been investigated by the Serious Fraud Office for use of corruption to sell arms to Chile, Czech Republic, Romania, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Tanzania and Qatar. The scale of corruption with regard to Saudi Arabia was such that the National Audit Office failed to publish its report its first time in its history because of the potential national and international implications. Last year, the company was accused of war crimes. It supplied arms used by the Saudi regime to bomb civilians. And that was schools and hospitals, tens of thousands killed. And how can you be independent in a relationship with the Prime Minister when it was the Prime Minister as Foreign Secretary was signing off the export licenses for the company itself? And I appreciate you've left the company in April, but this is one of the companies that's also associated with the revolving door problem that we have with regard to civil servants going from the civil service to the company and sometimes back again. So how can anyone have confidence in you enforcing ethical behaviour when you've been associated with an unethical arms dealer that's willing to sell arms to any murderous, brutal dictatorship and use corruption to secure those sales?
Thank you. I came to that role. It was the first role that I came to, having left public service. And I think it was a role that was, if you like, cognizant.
Oh, sorry, it cut off there, but I don't know why I did that. Anyway,
well, the answer he gives is pathetic. Yeah.
He goes on to say that he did so because the Prime Minister said that it was okay to sell these weapons, basically. The government had approved of these weapon sales. So, but the question was brilliant because it does really, it shows you the kind of dirty deeds that someone like the Queen's private secretary did right after he left the Queen's employ, and now he's back to work with Boris Johnson, selling the same weapons. So,
there was a lot more to emerge yet about the relationship between corruption on Jersey and arms trading. You might have read some of the Jersey offshore stuff about the corrupt local trust fund, La Hougue, that was basically manufacturing all kinds of fake paper trails for all kinds of crooks around the world, and has basically defrauded, God knows how many hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds and people. A totally corrupt operation run by a character called John Dick. And basically the people that this character worked with on Jersey are now, like, one of them is the bailiff at the moment now, former lawyer. Wow. Tim Lecoq was one of the lawyers that was doing all of this kind of corruption, and also one of his fellow lawyers, Julian Clydesmith, another simply evidenced mobster. And the relationship between people like John Dick and a couple of others of these characters is going to unfold further into the future. There's a lot more about this to emerge. People like Doug Leese, for example, is one of the characters who's
Douglas Leese? Sir Douglas Leese?
Yeah.
Not the Sir Douglas Leese, the Queen's arms importer, basically, for a period of time.
Yeah.
Involved in the Anwar, what was called I forget the name, but it's the big Saudi arms deal that was done just before the Iran-Contra affair, involving Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was in that arms deal.
And the whole One
Douglas
Web
Leese is
scandal.
involved in all these things in Jersey?
Sure. Wow. Yeah, the local law firm Augiers have been absolutely intrinsic to this kind of activity for decades, whilst simultaneously being the law firm for the Russian mob on Jersey. And certainly since, I think, probably before the collapse of communism, but certainly from the very early 90s, people like Augiers and people like Julian Clydesmith and Michael Burt, and a lot of these characters were basically doing things like one of the rackets they set up was an operation called FEMACO, Financial Management Company or something. And it was basically laundering out of a Russian-owned bank that was set up in Paris. From that bank, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars was laundered through this Jersey device called FEMACO, which was set up by the law firm Augiers. And interestingly, all of the lawyers responsible for doing that generally then progressed on to become the members of the judiciary on Jersey and attorney generals, and basically the same people were helping to shield child abusers and oppressing people like me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off over time here. I just wanted to say that is remarkable that Douglas Leese was involved in these things. And I would like to continue to follow up with you on that because I have a very long file on Douglas Leese. It's the Al Yamana deal that Epstein was involved with. And the Queen, and at the time, was selling a lot of planes and other equipment to Saudi Arabia for a huge amount of commission that Douglas Leese and others, presumably Epstein, got parts of. So it's quite interesting the connection of dots, if it in fact proves out, between Geit and Epstein, and who knows who else might be involved in that. I'm going to have to leave it there, though, because we have been talking for a long time, and it's late in Jersey. But I do want to thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you.
Because it's remarkable that you have found the courage and that you speak out all the time, and that even though you're facing real death threats, and I believe they are real.
Yeah,
it's remarkable that you're.
I know that I've got official notices from what passes for a police force locally notifying me that they're various thugs they know and people they know who are actually killers are threatening to murder.
We want you to stay safe and hope you do, because it's so important, the work that you're doing. Every time you're able to shine a light on what's going on there, it becomes clearer to everybody else in the world what's really going on, because it is a global enterprise. This is transnational crime, and it is a global thing that's happening. And we have
this enterprise that we're discussing, like Brexit and Trump, symptoms of it. But this transnational mobsterism has become so powerful and dangerous now. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it represents a clear and present and imminent existential threat to the survival of global civil society.
I think you're right there. As terrifying as that statement is, I think you're absolutely right. Stuart, thank you so much, Stuart Syvret, for joining us from Jersey tonight. After this break, I'll come back and just say a few last words, but thank you so much for your time and everything you do in exposing the mob. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Zev, and anytime.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll be right back after this break. Tonight's show is brought to you by Helix Sleep, and they have a special offer for Narativ viewers. I've heard it from so many people. The one thing that's changed since January is their sleep. Not waking up worrying about what the president might have done or said or tweeted makes the world of a difference. I don't think I had a good solid night's sleep in 4 years. And it wasn't only the president. My 10-year-old mattress, which started life as a 12-inch foam mattress, had shrunk to an 8-inch mattress, and getting out of bed was often more of a slide than a bounce. It was time for a new mattress. Helix Sleep has a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. Why would you buy a mattress made for somebody else? Changing the course of a country can take a village. Changing the course of your sleep takes a quiz. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/narrative. That's the way we spell narrative, Narativ. That's helixsleep.com/narrative for up to $200 off and 2 free pillows just for you. Tonight's show is... I didn't realize that was a pillow reference. We sell pillows as well, just like Sean Hannity. Seriously, that's a very good mattress, and Helix Sleep deserve your support, as do all our sponsors, because we wouldn't be able to do the show without you. I wanted to quickly mention before we left The World Beneath. If you haven't heard episode 2, you got to listen to episode 2 because it is remarkable. We find out all about how breaking the codes happened. It's a remarkable story about a woman who was able to really be at the forefront of creating the art of breaking codes. And LB does a phenomenal job on The World Beneath. You can go to Apple or any of your podcast players and download it now. Episode 2 is out this week. Or you can subscribe and get all 20. And of course, if you didn't yet subscribe, also subscribe to Prevail, the podcast by Greg Oliar. It drops every Friday. It's brilliant. I enjoy it every Friday. And we get to talk about it on the after show after Friday. And in fact, I'm going to leave you tonight with a little promo that our friend Greg has provided us. So you get to hear a little bit of him on our way out the door tonight. Thank you so much for being here on Narativ Live. We'll be back on Friday with the after show. What a remarkable time we've had tonight with Stuart Syvret, and certainly an eye-opening conversation that we'll continue to follow up here on Narativ. To support Narativ, patreon.com/narrative, Narativ. That's patreon.com/narrative. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube right now, please subscribe. There, I finally remembered to do it. Please subscribe. Hit, what is it? Smash the subscribe button. Smash the subscribe button, if you will. All right, everybody. Have a good night.
And this is Prevail.
Дамы и господа, это Prevail. И ваш ведущий Грег Олиер.
There's a goal here, which is to make sure that Vladimir Putin not only stays in power, but that they're allowed to continue stealing.
When you look at Brexit and you say, what might have also happened when Leah was being interrogated, like Brexit, a bunch of confused people following orders, really having no idea what they were doing.
Tax avoidance on that level is only serving the interests, frankly, of a lot of mobsters and corrupt governments.
The inherent question, is Maria Butina a spy? And Maria Butina was in charge of espionage. So that's a difficult place to start to begin with.
Those intangibles that those people want to have, we can't take advantage of that in dealing with Russia and China and Iran. If we can't do that, then you know what? Maybe we don't deserve to continue.
Narativ is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative.